Shalom and welcome to Simchat Yisrael. This week's Besorah is from John chapter 9 and is about Yeshua healing a man born blind. Throughout Yeshua's ministry, we see him heal with a word or with a touch or even heal from a distance. But this time, when Yeshua sees a man in need of healing, he reaches down, takes a bit of dirt from the ground, spits into it, and rubs it on the man's eyes. There are a number of Christian interpretations of this passage, most of them understanding Yeshua's actions to be a metaphorical representation of the salvation experience. But I don't believe that Yeshua was acting in a symbolic way that he only expected to be understood centuries later. Yeshua had a very specific reason for doing what he did, and he knew that his actions would be fully understood by the Jews who witnessed them. I think if we put ourselves in the mindset of a first century Jew living in Palestine, knowledgeable both in the Hebrew scriptures and in the oral traditions, I think we can understand why Yeshua healed this man using mud and spittle. Before we begin, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel down below. Context is always the key to understanding Yeshua's actions. You have to understand what's going on in the wider story to understand what's happening in this story. And the key to understanding this story is the context of Yeshua's conflict with the Pharisees, namely his conflict about their elevation of the oral traditions over the Torah and his conflict over his identity as the Son of God. Let's start with the traditions. Remember, Yeshua does not have a problem with the Torah. He doesn't even have a problem with the traditions. Yeshua's problem is with the Pharisees who trample upon the law of God for the sake of the traditions of men. Yeshua accuses the Pharisees of placing a heavy burden on the people's shoulders, and for good reason. The traditions are so comprehensive that they even regulate where you can spit. In Mishnah Torah Tractate Shabbat chapter 21, the sages ruled that if you are walking about on Shabbat and you have to spit, you need to wait until you come upon a rock or a tree to do your business. Because if you spit on the ground, your saliva would mix with the dust and form clay. And everybody knows that making clay on Shabbat is strictly forbidden. Yeshua would have known this, and I think that he intentionally made clay to highlight how skewed the Pharisees' priorities were. Because he knew that they would be more concerned about him spitting on the ground than on the fact that he had healed a man blind from birth. Yeshua could have healed this man in any number of ways, but he intentionally chose a way that would demonstrate that it was the Pharisees who were truly blind. But Yeshua is doing more than simply thumbing his nose at the Pharisees. Recall that this is not the only occasion that Yeshua used his saliva to heal. In Mark chapter 8, Yeshua spits on a blind man's eyes and restores his sight. And in 7, he heals a deaf and mute man by spitting. There's a pattern here, and where there's a pattern, there is a deeper meaning. By using saliva to heal, Yeshua is making a powerful statement about his identity. Remember, context is key. Just a few verses earlier in the book of John, Yeshua is speaking with the Pharisees, and he tells them, "I witness for myself, and the Father who sent me bears witness for me." Then they said to him, "Where is your Father?" The Pharisees knew all about Yeshua. They knew that Mary is his mother, but they also know that Joseph is not his biological father. In their eyes, Yeshua was born of sin and scandal. He doesn't even have a father. How can he be who he says he is? Illegitimacy was a big deal in biblical times. Occasionally, one son would contest the claims of another as to who was the genuine heir. This is why Abraham sent Ishmael into the wilderness after Isaac was born, to clear up any questions of inheritance. But Jewish tradition in the Second Temple period taught that God had a test that would supernaturally reveal who was the legitimate firstborn son. Bava Batra, the section of Talmud that deals with property laws, records a case in which two men come before Rabbi Hanina to settle a dispute over which of them was the firstborn son of their father. The rabbi says, "I know just what to do." He brings him to a blind man, and he tells the first son, "Spit in this man's eyes." He does, and nothing happens. Then he tells the other son to do the same. He spits in the blind man's eyes, and something miraculous happens. The man's vision is restored. The two men are astonished, and Hanina declares that the second man is the true heir, because tradition states that the saliva of a firstborn son of a father has the power to heal blindness. How amazing is it that just moments after being mockingly asked who his father is, Yeshua heals a blind man with his saliva. It's as if he's saying, "You have questioned who my father is. Well, now you know. My Father is the source of all healing, and I am his firstborn son and the rightful inheritor of his kingdom." And there's one final piece of the puzzle that explains why Yeshua used saliva and clay to heal this man's eyes. The Dead Sea Scrolls are ancient Jewish religious manuscripts dating back to the time of Yeshua that were discovered in the Qumran caves in the West Bank. Along with some of the oldest known surviving manuscripts of the books of the Bible, the Dead Sea Scrolls also contain extra biblical works that preserve evidence of the diversity of religious thought in Yeshua's time. One of these extra biblical works is called the Rule of the Community. What's important for us is a verse from a poem contained in this book that contemplates human nature. It states, "What shall one born of a woman be considered in your presence? Shaped from dust has he been. What shall humankind be considered in your presence? Shaped from dust he has been. He is spat saliva, molded clay, and for dust is his longing." In Yeshua's time, the human body was considered to be made up from the dust of the earth, molded clay, and spat saliva. And that's not so far from the truth. Have you ever taken one of those ancestry tests where they have you spit into a container? Chemically, the human body really is made up of elements that are found in the earth, and our entire genetic code, everything that physically makes us who we are, is contained in our saliva. Yeshua's actions take on an entirely new significance in light of these facts. This mysterious healing can only be understood within the context of Yeshua's conflict with the Pharisees. The Pharisees accuse Yeshua of being a lawbreaker. They accuse him of violating the Sabbath. They accuse him of lying about his heritage and his identity. So how does Yeshua respond? He spits into the dust of the ground and forms a piece of clay to show that he is the Lord of the Sabbath and that the mercy of God is greater than the traditions of men. He places his saliva into the eyes of a blind man, healing his vision to prove that he is the firstborn son of his Father in heaven, that he is the great physician and the source of all healing and goodness. And he takes the dust of the earth, molded clay, and spat spittle, the three elements from which the human body are formed, and he uses them to make an incomplete body whole. Yeshua performs the same miraculous act of creating life that God the Father did in the beginning of creation. To our 21st century eyes, Yeshua's actions are strange and perplexing. But to the Jews who witnessed it in its original context, Yeshua had done nothing less than prove that he was the Son of God. Shalom, and thanks for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe, and don't forget to visit simchatyisrael.org to learn more.